What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to my channel, Movie Files. Elliot back again with my weekly recap, breakdown, and review of the latest episode of Apple TV Plus C Season 2. We're breaking out episode 6, which was titled The Truth About Unicorns, an episode in which we see a lot of blood and betrayal, but more importantly, we see Kofun being literally seduced by the dark side. We're breaking it all down here in the spoiler review, but before we dive into it, make sure you're checking me out on all my other social media accounts. If you all are new to the channel, welcome to the community. Consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell. That way you can get the alert for when I drop new content. If you enjoyed this spoiler review, well, make sure to like and share the review. It helps out the channel a lot, but also appreciate the support. And in those comments, let's talk about this 6th episode, an episode in which we see a peace treaty go south. We see again blood and betrayal, Kofun, Queen Kane, Rin and Haniwa, and Ito finding out about Rin's sight. I mean, there's so much to dive deep into it. I'm so excited to hear you all's thoughts, your pros, your cons, and of course your thoughts and theories of what you hope to see in the weeks ahead. But before we dive into my recap, just my initial thoughts. Listen, man, I sound like a broken record at this point, but I truly am in love with this new season. This episode to me is just continuing the show. I don't know, and I have to look it up to verify this, but I don't know if it's the same writers from last season, and not discounting last year's, you know, it was a great season, but I feel like the writing has just been so much stronger and just more just engaging and more in depth, and just everyone's bringing their A game. Secondary characters, supporting characters, our main characters, obviously the new characters being introduced. I'm just, the writing's just clicking on all cylinders. And again, you guys, I don't know if you've been paying attention to it in the last few weeks, we haven't gotten any action, and that's what really sold me on this show last year. Was like, yeah, the story's cool, blah, 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 but the choreography is incredible, the blood, the guts, blah, 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 it's killing everyone. That was like my main draw of last year, and again, really good story, but I was so invested in the action. I love the action this season, but we've been focusing more on the character development, more of the story, and that's what's been so impressive with me with this season, especially in this episode, and especially the last 3 episodes. The writing has been spectacular. But let's get into it again. Let me know your thoughts of the comments. Have you missed the action? We get some action in this episode, which we'll break down, but have you missed the action, or are you okay with how this show has really been shaping up the characters and development and setting up this major war? Let me know your thoughts on that in the comments. But let's break down this episode about unicorns as we open up with Paris having her visions regarding betrayal and blood, and she tells Haniwa that her parents, who was already left to go to this peace treaty, she should try to prevent them from this betrayal happening. So she makes her way onto her horse, which she's never ridden before, which just shows you again Haniwa is such a badass and such a warrior within her own right. But we see Charlotte's like, I need to go with you. She's like, I don't have time, I'll be safe. So she's on this quest to stop her parents from hopefully being betrayed. Again, I love Haniwa and Paris, and these visions are so cool. But meanwhile, we see Rin having a conversation with Ito, and she's going to be representing him at this peace treaty because he's not going to be going, and she's not going to be going as a general, but she just got a promotion as the captain, which to me, this scene and throughout this season so far, which will be inevitably, when Ito finds out about the truth about her being responsible for Baba Voss escaping, obviously Haniwa escaping, that's going to be such a powerful scene, because you can tell Ito knows, number one, he cares for his people, but he really cares for Rin, especially I think he mentions in this episode that he found her at a young age. So he really not only respects her, but he cares for her. He might look at her as an actual daughter. So when he learns about that betrayal, that's going to be something I'm looking forward to seeing. But I'm loving that development that we're getting between those two characters. And we haven't really, I love how the show has sprinkled in Ito in the season. He's had, obviously cut off the head of Jeremy Morel. He's a very pivotal character, but he's popping in and out. And normally I would be frustrated by that, because I'm a big fan of Dave Bautista, but I like how the way the show is using him so far. I would imagine once him and Baba Voss have that second round, we're going to get more of that action. But I've really enjoyed the usage of Ito so far. And also, too, I'd imagine his schedule is a little bit, he's a busy man. He's a Guardian, he's, in all these big movies. He's in Dune, so I imagine his schedule was probably hard to work around. But I'm enjoying his presence in the show. But on to this journey. I mentioned how the new characters have really been impressing me, Charlotte and the Toads of the world, as well as Harlan. Now, Harlan, we're supposed to hate him. I mentioned it many weeks ago, how I always compare this show to kind of the similarities to Game of Thrones, and him reminding me a little bit of Littlefinger. But what I like about what they're doing with Harlan, they give us these moments where he's obviously conniving, making these plans behind people's back. But he also has like these little vulnerable moments, and this is one of them as he's talking to Maghra about how he misses his brother. He jokes around about it. He was going to inevitably find his death, but he's sad in this moment. He mentions to Maghra, "You're literally the only family that I have left." Now, knowing Harlan so far, that's obviously maybe a way for him to get closer to Maghra, to get on his side, and for them to have this type of, which I think the show might go that direction. She might not fall in love with Harlan, but I think she's slowly but surely caring for him more. I don't know if that's intentional on Harlan's part or if he is truly being vulnerable in this moment, but that's the thing I love about Harlan. You don't know his true intentions, but I love that about the character. But moving on to the training of Anakin Skywalker with Kofun and Toad, who is, he's teaching him how to be more in tune with his senses. And I say Anakin Skywalker because literally he's being seduced by the dark side. Like, this is literally Anakin, and Kofun is like the prequels with the Phantom Menace's young kid who really doesn't do anything, he really doesn't want to cause any harm, but as he gets closer to the Emperor, he becomes, as we know, Darth Vader. And I'm telling you all, Kofun will be the Darth Vader of this season, especially with him being seduced literally by the Emperor, or in this case Queen Kane, that we'll talk about a little bit later. But Haniwa makes her way to warning her parents, and they're just kind of like, well, Paris has been wrong before, but we're going to be on our P's and Q's if her vision comes to be true, which it does. Back to, speaking of the Emperor, aka Queen Kane, she continues courting her young nephew as she wants to take a ride on his horse, literally and figuratively, a little bit later in the episode. Now, I believe this might be the first time we've ever heard Queen Kane, like, we've seen her smile, like evilly smiling, but she was like, I don't know, let me know in the comments, genuinely happy in this moment with Kofun, or is it all a part of her scheme that she's just faking this happiness, she's faking this smiles and laughter? Again, very similar to Harlan. We know they're so deceptive. We know they have their portrayal, that we know they have their game, but is it a genuine moment? I don't think it is, but let me know your thoughts on that in the comments. But speaking of, again, the writing of the show, we get the peace treaty, and it's such a great moment seeing the Trivantians talking to Harlan and Maghra, and this the back and forth. Harlan gets upset because one of the representatives from the Trivantian army comments on cutting off the head of his brothers and like detailing every little thing about her killing him, and he obviously gets upset, punches her and all that, which I don't know if it was me. I'm just thinking about Harlan again, his kind of in-betweenness. Is he a good guy, bad guy, somewhere in between, which I think he is, but something inside of me was like, did Harlan have anything to do with his brother's death to make it seem like it was all a part of, obviously his scheming and setting this war, to get the war, very Littlefinger-ish? I don't know. Let me know if you all think that Harlan might have had something to do with his brother's death and just he's secretly working with Queen Kane. Let me know your thoughts on that in the comments. But moving on, we see Paris having a conversation with Toad regarding this dark path that Kofun is going on. Again, a very kind of Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan Kenobi talking about Anakin Skywalker, and she just wants, she mentions to Toad that I just want you to defend him, and you're a good man, you're an honest man. So I think that the Toad and Kofun, again, going back to my Anakin Skywalker thing, Toad, Kofun, Anakin Skywalker versus Obi-Wan Kenobi, who has the higher ground. I can see that fight happening a little bit later. Let me know if that's something you all would like to see, which I think Toad would win. But we'll see with Kofun and his training and his Dark Emperor on his side. But cutting back to Harlan again, not only does he get the vulnerable moments, but he gets some funny moments as he keeps calling Baba Voss Boo-Boo, which just shows us them setting up this secret meeting, as well as Maghra taking charge as a queen. Maghra's really stepping up this season. I'm really enjoying her kind of growth in her character, which brings us to, speaking of growth, we see Ren, who has been given the task by Ito to do her own version of betrayal with that knife being in the blood, but in the bread, but she has her meeting with Haniwa, which at first they're not really like super lovey-dovey, but they have this conversation and they agree to never hurt one another. But by the end of this episode, that promise has been broken, as I'm thinking at this point that Ren and Haniwa are going to have to go toe-to-toe, and they're going to have to fight to the death, and, you know, especially after what happens in this episode. But we see the secret meeting taking place where Maghra informs the Travantian representatives that she's going to be taking queenship very soon, and that they have this agreement in place. They're going to apologize, and they're going to have this thing set up. But it's Baba Voss. He's there. They know he's there. But Baba's looking at Maghra, and go back to that conversation he had with Charlotte last week in regards to, do you trust her? Is she the same person? I think Bob was looking at Maghra at the point and being like, I don't know who that is anymore. Seeing her, like, she's not conniving or whatnot, but just seeing her just kind of go this different route, that he's never seen this royalty making deals behind people's backs. So I think that that's something to look into in regards to their relationship moving forward. But more of Queen Kane, aka the Emperor, and Anakin Skywalker and Kofun as they are taking this forbidden drug. They're feeding the drug to each other, and I'm thinking to myself, I don't know which one I feel more uncomfortable with. Do I feel uncomfortable with them feeding drugs to each other, or what we got last week? And it gets worse. So this week definitely wins the uncomfortability contest, because we see them taking the drugs and then they do the deed. They actually, and I mentioned it, 3 weeks ago in my review, that she's going to end up having sex with her nephew, and she's going to get pregnant by him. And I think the seeds literally have been planted in this episode as we see them. The show doesn't veer away from. I know a lot of people, I was uncomfortable. I know a lot of you all were comfortable last week, but I was super uncomfortable this week as they literally do the deed and they show us everything. And yeah, that sighted baby is on its way soon. But don't get me wrong when it comes to the trust that Harlan, I don't know if I can trust him or not, but he talks about why he's so, like, connected to the Travantians. He's done, like, these secret dealings over the years, and I don't know if that's true or not. But again, we see him going back to Bobo or Boo Boo, and he's like, he has to sleep with Maghra, or at least in the same tent, just to make the appearances, make it seem like they're married again. I love that Harlan character. I hate him, but he's just such a fascinating character. But as we see the treaty is completed, you know, everyone says their apologies. The Travantians do have one more thing to add to this agreement. The queen and her sighted whole deal going on, that has to stop immediately. But again, that baby's coming sooner rather than later. But Paris and Toad, they have, like I had mentioned, the Kofun going down the dark path and trying to help him not go on a dark path, which again, I'm telling you all, that Kofun and Toad might be a fight in future episodes. But we see Kane and Kofun have another quieter moment, and they agree to never lie to each other, no matter how dark or how upsetting the truth may be, which leads us to Haniwa and Rin having their moment about, you know, just sharing their truths and their loves. And we're seeing both of these young kids, or these, you know, Baba Voss and Maghra's kids, having this kind of forbidden love for, obviously, Rin on Ito's side, and obviously Queen Kane and Kofun. So it's so interesting to see this dynamic between the younglings and the paths they're going on this forbidden love. I'm loving the character and the paths and the storylines they have both of those characters going through so far, and they're both going to get their heart broken, or at least one of them will. But it's finally time to get a little bit of action. It wasn't a ton of action, but it was still some badass action, as we know, to come with this show. As we see, Queen Kane has sent assassins to kill the higher ups in the Travantians, and we see Baba Voss being the ninja, aka Daredevil, as he's sensing where those assassins are. He ultimately takes out one of them, but unfortunately it's too late. The one assassin is able to kill all of the main Travantians, which brings Rin into seeing the death of her leaders, which makes her think that Haniwa had something to do with it. She was distracting her because obviously she has sight, so she could have saw that, warned them. But now this path of their love is on a path of destruction, because Haniwa she thinks she's responsible for the death. So again, I just love how they're just switching the narrative. I'm thinking that Rin was gonna betray Ito and be on Baba Voss and Haniwa's side, but not after this episode. I love how they switched that up on us. Really good writing there. But again, we find out that Queen Kane was all behind this the whole time. Speaking of Queen Kane, again, she is just continuously just putting Kofun in this web of lies, as she's like, oh, I don't feel safe. She comes and lies in his bed, and she wants, and what she's doing so smartly is she's making Kofun make it seem like, oh, I'm protecting the queen. She trusts me. You know, she's putting all this confidence in him, only to inevitably break him down and manipulate him. Queen Kane is Cersei, like I said, she's doing her thing. She is playing her games, and he is playing right into it. But, you know, we end the episode with her just eating her chicken. Maghra's obviously upset because this whole thing, she spent all this time developing this agreement with the Trevantians just to have it being torn down right in front of her. She throws her food on the floor, and we see Queen Kane just still eating that chicken. And we wrap with Ito learning of the news of everything that just went down, learning of the news that Ren blames all this on Baba Voss, which obviously is going to piss off Ito, which is going to make that fight even more intense. And he mentions, you know, the triangle is going to want to know, why did you survive? This is the second time that there's been some type of betrayal. Why should I trust you? She tells him her big secret that she can see, and he was just like shocked. Like, that was like a very genuine moment when Ito finds out that the girl that he's been caring for, that he respects, that he loves, has been sighted. I don't know. I think he's going to take that as good news, and obviously she's going to probably, you know, don't forget that he has control of all of Jorah Morelt's kids. She's going to probably be the leader of the sighted army once that inevitably happens. But he was so shocked, and boom goes the dynamite. What an incredible episode. The lies, the betrayals. Can you trust this person? The Anakin Skywalker seducing the dark side, and Queen Kane, the betrayal of Queen Kane. I mean, this was just another fantastic episode, and I'm in love with this season so far, and I love this episode. And we have 3 of them things left, and as we get closer and closer to that war, expect more and more betrayals from all of the different sides. Again, Maghra, you know, Harlan, Baba Voss losing his wife. I mean, this show is just clicking on all cylinders. But hey, that's just my thoughts. I want to know your thoughts, pros, cons, thoughts, theories for the weeks ahead. What worked, what didn't work? Let's talk about it in the comments. Hope you all enjoyed this review. Before you leave, make sure to like the video, share the video, leave your thoughts in the comments, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit that bell. That way you don't miss any of my other content. As you can see on the screen now, subscribe, check out the other content. Hope you're staying safe, and we'll see you on the next one.